Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This past Sunday, I had the pleasure of attending a matinee performance at the Tobin Center with our synagogue's own Night on the Town group to see the classic Tennessee Williams play, The Glass Menagerie. Now, as someone who grew up doing community theater and later who became an English major in college and later an English teacher of high school, this was right up my alley. It was a unique opportunity for me because my wife isn't really a connoisseur of the fine arts. In fact, when I told her about the plot of the show, she said, "That sounds really depressing." Well, yeah, that's kind of Tennessee Williams' shtick. It's like when I was a high school English teacher, I taught my students William Shakespeare's The Tragedy of Hamlet, and after we read it, a couple of them said, "This is really sad." And I had to remind them that's why it's called a tragedy for a reason. Now, if you've never seen The Glass Menagerie, I'm going to be talking about the play a little bit tonight, and I feel like I can do this freely without people accusing me of spoiling the show, because after all, this was written in 1944, so you've all had literally 82 years to catch up. Anyway, to summarize, this is a memory play narrated by a character named Tom about his life with his fragile and slightly disabled sister Laura, both of whom live in a cramped St. Louis apartment with nothing but Laura's collection of glass animals and their domineering mother to keep them company. When Tom brings home a friend from work named Jim to act as a gentleman caller for his sister, the interaction starts off hopeful, and initially, the audience is convinced that Jim and Laura can, in fact, develop feelings for one another. But later in the scene, Jim accidentally breaks off the horn of Laura's glass unicorn, which is a pivotal moment in the play because the unicorn is her favorite animal, probably because it is unique and fragile, just like her. Furthermore, when Jim announces that he is in fact engaged to another girl, this news only deepens the family's tensions and Tom's desire to escape from St. Louis, which we're told he then does, abandoning his family. Like I said, just a really happy show. Now, as I mentioned, I really love theater, and I was trying to just take the whole experience in. But the Night on the Town group, they were on to me because they know, kind of like everyone in this room tonight knows, that any experience I have can and will be used as fodder for sermons, like what's happening right now. So throughout the show, several of them would ask me, they'd lean over and they'd say, "So Rabbi, do you have any ideas for a sermon about this yet? Anything you can use for a sermon? A sermon. And for whatever reason, I was initially really hesitant to this notion. You see, sometimes I think too much of myself. I fancy myself an artist or something. I thought, me? Use this as a sermon? I'm so sorry, it doesn't work like that. I even said something really annoying too. I apologize. I was like, this is what I said. Sometimes the experience has to speak to me. It has to move me to become a servant. Like, who says that? That's a really annoying thing to say. Don't let me say that again. Has to move me. But honestly, sometimes it's just harder to drush on some things than others. And after a couple days of thinking about it, I really just couldn't come up with anything glass menagerie related. I thought about it for a while, and I wrote some things down. I tried a couple different angles, but it didn't work. The ideas wouldn't land, and I finally felt that I had given it the old college try, but I had to just let this one go. I really couldn't find a connection between this week's Parshat Terumah, and the glass menagerie. It couldn't be done. Could not be done. And that's when I was talking to my friend Sam, whom I love to death, but he also does this really annoying rabbi thing. Sam likes to share helpful information way after it is helpful. He's the kind of guy when you say, hey, I just booked a great flight on American Airlines. He says, oh, you should have booked with Delta. They're running a special. Thank you, Sam. That would have been great to know before I booked it. Anyway, I was on the phone with Sam, Rabbi Sam Rotenberg, and we were talking about Torah. That's what rabbis do. And I asked him, I said, what are you speaking about for this week's Parshat Terumah? And I kid you not, this really annoying friend of mine says, oh, you mean the unicorn Parsha? I paused. I said, Sam, what do you mean the unicorn Parsha? And he responded very annoyingly, all matter-of-factly. He said, well, this week's Parsha is all about how to build the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And the Torah tells us that the Jewish people donated various things to help build it. Gold, silver, copper, yarn, linen, wood, oil, etc. But then the Torah mentions this word that most translators throughout history have had trouble translating. It says that the people donated the skin of a tachash to make the covering for the tabernacle. The problem with that is we have no idea what animal a tachash actually is. That word is not found anywhere else in the Torah, which leads the sages of the Talmud to say, and now I'm going to quote what the Gemara says, because I looked it up after he told me. This is from the Talmud, quote, the tachash only existed in the days of Moses, and it was a creature unto itself. It had a single horn on its forehead, and it came to Moses at the precise moment that the tabernacle was being built, and Moses made the covering for the tabernacle from it, and after that the tachash was lost and is no longer found. So yeah, unicorn Parsha. My jaw dropped to the floor. I don't think I had ever heard this theory before, and now this was an obvious sign that I would be giving a sermon about the thing I had previously declared I couldn't or wouldn't sermonize. It shows how much I know here. Anyway, I decided to do some more research about this animal, this tachash, and as crazy as the unicorn theory is, there are other ideas about the tachash that are likewise pretty darn strange. For example, Rashi, our favorite French medieval commentator, he also says that the tachash was an animal that only existed in the days of Moses, but he says that it was a beast that was, quote, multicolored, like a chameleon or something. Other sages and interpreters say that the tachash was a badger, and our own Chumash, the one sitting in front of you, the Eitz Chaim, that we read in this shul, says it was the skin of a dolphin. The Jews were wandering the desert hunting for aquatic mammal skins. I must admit that theory doesn't really hold water. Thank you. Whew, that was bad, sorry. In fact, the more I researched, the stranger these ideas got. I was totally perplexed. And for a while, I was actually a little angry about it. Why wouldn't the text give us the answer? Why make us grasp at straws to understand this totally foreign concept? And yet, friends, the more I've thought about it, that's the beauty of Torah. It preserves the mystery, leaving rabbis like me and the rabbis of antiquity to fill in the gaps. And that's what I'm going to try to do tonight, so hold on. The sages say that at the center of Parshat Terumah, at the heart of the instructions for building the tabernacle, God's dwelling place, there was a mystical, one-horned, one-of-a-kind creature. Why? Because the Mishkan itself was one of a kind. It wasn't mass-produced. It wasn't identical to anything that ever came before it or after it. It was built from the voluntary offerings of the Jewish people, each person bringing what they uniquely had to give: gold, yarn, wood, skill, generosity, vision. Holiness emerged not from sameness, but from the distinct contributions from the people that were woven together to make something beautiful. That's the difference between the Torah's unicorn and Tennessee's unicorn. In the play, when it loses its horn, the unicorn becomes just like all the other horses in her glass menagerie. Its uniqueness fades. But the Mishkan didn't demand that anyone lose their horn. In fact, it was only built because everyone contributed on their own accord in their own unique way. It's only this reason that we're told that the community was able to flourish and invite God to dwell amongst them. And friends, when you think about it, that's what makes this community so beautiful as well. I mean, just look around for a moment. None of us are identical. We all have different stories, different talents, different backgrounds, different ways of thinking, giving, leading. Some of us bring scholarship. Some of us bring music. Some of us bring kindness. Some bring humor. Some bring steady commitment year after year. Some of you bring gifts that no one else even sees. But without you, trust me, the synagogue would not be able to function properly. Our congregation is not beautiful despite our differences. It is beautiful because of them. Like the Tzachash, each of you has something uniquely yours that you offer to this beloved shul. And when you bring it, when your heart moves you, this place becomes more than a building. It becomes a mishkan, a dwelling place for something holy. So, yes, this is the unicorn Parsha, apparently, whether I like it or not, which means I owe Rabbi Sam an apology because apparently he was right again. And to those of you who kept nudging me at the show, sermon, fine, you win. It turns out the experience apparently did move me. And if that realization makes me slightly annoying, just remember, every synagogue needs at least one unicorn. Shabbat shalom.